Hello, everybody, and welcome to Worldsmithing, where we take a topic and world build it. I'm Cody,
And I'm Joe.
and boy howdy, do we have a special one for you now that the moon base is gone. The moon's gone over the horizon. We've left the post-futuristic moon base behind, and we got a fun new topic. But before we get there, how are you doing? What nerdy stuff have you been up to?
Oh man, I've been working on all kinds of fun different stuff.
For some reason, I
Um
thought you were going to say working on the railroad. I don't know why, but
all the live long day.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been we're still continuing to work my way through Dune. I try to log on and hang out on my island at least a little bit every day on Animal Crossing. Make sure all my villagers know that I'm still around and that I love
Yeah.
them.
That's very
Um,
sweet of you.
yeah, we just got a new villager. Her name is Mallory, and she's a little duck.
Nice.
She's super cute. And
Nice. I like it.
my best friend is a wolf named Fang.
Oh, wow, that sounds scary, but like it's Animal Crossing, so I know it's not, but like damn.
Yeah. And how about you? What nerdy stuff have you been up to, my friend?
Man, a whole so a lot and then not a lot. It's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um
Yeah, I feel it.
so like So my two big passion hobbies are tabletop role playing games and video games. And video games right now are a little lower and not as much on my radar simply because I couldn't stream for a really long time because of my internet.
Mm,
So I've been putting my a lot of my nerd passion into the tabletop role playing games that I'm currently running.
sure.
And in our spy campaign, or in the spy campaign that I'm working on with my other group, they had just kind of found the big twist in the story. Like they're just kind of like, kind of like our post futurist moon base. They are kind of Suicide Squad esque characters where like the government will disavow any knowledge of who you are if you get caught, kind of stuff. And their first mission kind of goes, really bad really quickly, and they feel like they're being set up, and now they're starting to figure out why. So
Mm,
that was a really cool moment. And then I'm working on your campaign where we just finished kind of a little mini case that you guys were working on, and we're kind of leaning into the next big arc where we kind of dive into your character's kind of motivations and how it's reflected on the character that you're kind of following. So that's going to be really cool.
no man, we fixed that. It was in and out. We're all level
Yeah, in
6
and
now.
out, 5 minutes,
Yeah, it was a super easy.
super quick. And then
Just knock that out.
here's your character throwing up, wounded from whatever battle. So yeah, I'm just kind of doing a lot of prep work
Sure.
for tabletop role playing games. What? Yeah, yeah. Okay. I was about to ask you again what you've been up to, but I
Yeah.
forgot you went first.
Well, I don't know. One of my things that I do for fun is I just kind of like come up with character ideas and things like that
Sure.
too. So it's
Do
like,
you got a fun one,
um, let's see.
like off the cuff?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's been a while since I played a barbarian. Um,
Barbarians are a very special, interesting class where
it's true.
you just get real beef, real strong.
Oh, did you see that they released a new Unearthed Arcana playtest
Yeah.
today?
Uh, Today,
Today's this
no.
episode. Or I don't know
Uh,
when that was released, but it's a new bard subclass.
no, I haven't seen that one yet. The
It's
last
the
one I saw was the UA feats that they added, which are really neat.
it's the College of Spirits.
Huh.
And the
Okay.
basic idea is that you're kind of like summoning old
Ancestors
summoning
and whatnot.
yeah, ancestors and stuff to like
Okay.
help you out um in all of your various uh,
Sing-songy ways.
sing-songy ways, exactly. And
Cool.
hey,
I'll have to check that out.
speaking of speaking of um bards and things like that.
Uh-huh.
Oh
What a good
man.
segue.
Yeah, hey, there are bards in the thing that we're going to talk about that I don't want to
Yeah,
spoil yet.
100%.
So hey, Cody, like you said, the moon base is drifting
Yeah, it's
back
drifting off into
into
space.
the distance. It's
Yeah.
gone forever now. We don't
But I
even see
hear
it
the
anymore.
but I hear the sound of clanging as if there's another world to build somewhere nearby. Do you hear
Yeah.
that?
Ding 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 ding.
Oh, look, over here in the look, I'm just going to say it cuz I can't find a way to fit this into this weird narrative that I started. Uh we're working on our new thing, which is personified animals living in a
Yeah.
medieval setting.
Allah Redwall.
Yeah, this is initially inspired by the Redwall series because I read about the first couple chapters when I was a kid of the
Hmm.
first book. And then while I was thinking about things we could do for the next one, I was like, hey, what about them cool animals that had like swords and stuff and they fought?
Yeah.
Um, and so, with that being said, I'll kind of get into our first point because it's super important for people who are watching this.
Sure.
And I would like to address this up front.
Yeah.
Because I've never read these, at best I just know that there are various animals who are personified and they got cool swords and shit and they fight.
Hmm.
Um, I found out as I was doing research and as Joe was telling me, um, that the author of this book did not treat the idea of race in a very good light. Um,
Yeah.
it came to my attention that basically in most cases in the book, if you were a certain race, you were by nature evil, which is something at Fandom Roulette we do not stand behind.
Hmm.
So um, at best, we're using Redwall as a like kind of a jumping point for what we want to do. So we're probably not going to be super faithful to this, but we are definitely inspired by the idea of being like a personified like rodent who has to fight like a crazy scorpion or something. I don't know, like
Yeah.
that sounds really cool to me, and that's where we're kind of going from this moment.
Yeah. If I could comment on that a little
Of
bit as well.
course. Yeah.
Um so it's interesting, right? Because this is something that kind of reveals itself to you when you think back on it. Um because, I read a bunch of these books when I was a kid. And it was one of those deals where it's like there's a place that there's an aspect of it that holds a special place in my heart, but when you think back about how the just the various words that were used to describe like the evil creatures, so the rats and the stoats and the weasels, and ironically enough badgers are a good animal group, because I've only ever heard that badgers are little sons of bitches. Um, but like, it's one of those deals where it's like I don't ever want to revisit it because it's like almost afraid, because if I acknowledged it and realized it in like high school, I can only imagine what it would be like to return to it today. So as Cody said, we don't stand for that here on this little program that we have going here. Um, that is in a lot of ways kind of like lazy world building at best, and kind of nefarious at worst.
It's just like whatever, they're evil. It's like, no, there needs to be like culture and nuance, and like people shouldn't be defined by defined like that.
Yeah, exactly. But I would for a minute really like to talk about what I remember fondly about Redwall,
Of
if
course, yeah,
if
yeah,
I
yeah.
could.
There's definitely, just because there's one huge issue with it doesn't mean there aren't like some cool things that we can like
Yeah.
look for and use as kind of our fuel to imagine a world like this.
Yeah, for sure. So it is so Redwall is very light fantasy, in that it's like, yes, it is talking animals. So that right there, right off the bat, is very fantastical. Animals do not talk. Animals do
What
not wear armor, nor do they
all of
swing
my
little
animals
swords
wear all of my animals wear armor. That's the rule at my house.
and swing swords.
Well, yes,
That's scary.
I'm still teaching Odin how to do that, but once
Mm.
he gets down the sword and hammer, he'll be good to go.
But yeah, in terms of like, there's not a lot of magic, or I don't think there's any magic. There, so in that sense, it is low fantasy, in that you don't have things like wizards or magic or magical things like that. There are no magic items. But the thing that I thought that was always cool to me as a kid was, there are a lot of them. There are a lot of Redwall books, and they were all pretty beefy books too. Like, you felt like a smart little kid when you were carrying around this book that seemed like it was a little too thick for a kid your age group. But in every book there's kind of, um there's mention of various, like, historical figures, and the various tasks and deeds that they did. Um but uh 3 or 4 books down the road, it's like, "Oh, this is the story, so this bell was created this abbey was built by Joseph the Bellmaker, and it was designed to be a safe haven for all animals," and things like that. And then, like, 3 books later, you're reading about that story. And I thought as a kid, I thought it was really cool because it was a very vast lived in book, and almost all of the books had little framing narratives where it was always like a character or two that you might recognize from like another book, and they're going into like the tomes of like the library of the abbey, and they're asking the librarian, like, "Oh, like, I've always been curious about dot dot dot." And it's like, "Oh," and then they pull out this big tome, and so like you're kind of learning with them, and so you're finding out all of these really cool stories along with them. It's a vast world with a vast history, and like, oh, this character is talking about the badger stronghold of Salamandastron, and then 5 books down the road you're reading about the badger stronghold of Salamandastron and things like that. And so that was always something that I thought was really cool as a kid, like, even unlike other fantasy novels that I had been interested in. um for the most part, they followed like a linear path where it's like you might get mention of, in Lord of the Rings you get mention of, like, oh, well, this is Helm's Deep, named after Helm Hammerhand. But like, you never in the Lord of the Rings got a story of Helm Hammerhand. I know Tolkien wrote stuff, but for me as a kid, it was really cool to see how much the timeline jumped around, and how much he was putting into like telling you these stories, rather than just kind of mentioning them to be some like cool world building flavor, and then just never exploring it or mentioning it again. So that was always something I thought was cool about it as a kid.
That does sound really neat. I like story like long stories or even tabletop role playing game campaigns where it's like, remember that thing that you learned on the very first day of this campaign? Well, that became important like 2 years down the road, and like that feels really cool. And I'm kind of like happy that like that was an experience you could have with Redwall.
Yeah. So what inspired you about this? What made you
Honestly,
pitch it, suggest it?
so I wanted to do something completely different, right? I
Mhm.
wanted like we kind of did like a semi-modern fantasy Egypt. We did, we went to the future and did, a moon base. So I was like, you know what? I want to go back to like the fantasy roots, but I want to do something really different. Like I don't want to just do like another fantasy world. Haha, let's do Lord of the Rings again. Like,
Sure.
and then I was like, what's something that I've never really tackled in the kind of world building aspect? And like for some reason in my brain I was like, remember that book from a long time ago where like there were like small rodents that were fighting with swords and shit, and they lived in like, fantasy castles and shit. That was
Mhm.
cool. We should do something like that. So yeah, it was just I was trying to really think out of the box for like things to do because I don't want these world buildings to just like be like, here's another Lord of the Rings, or you know kind of
Sure.
tread the same stuff that we've already tackled. So like this was kind of me trying to think outside of the box. Plus, I think while I was like looking for something, the tabletop role playing game Pugmire showed up, and I was like, oh
Mm.
yeah, that's got personified dogs and stuff in
Sure.
a game world.
And
Granted,
then
it's got its own world setting and stuff, so like not quite that, but our own thing.
what's that board game called?
Mice and Mystics is the one
Mice
I think
and
you're.
Mystics.
Yeah, that was
The
another
the
thing that like I think I might have like walked by it while I was like doing something else. I was like, man, I really like this game, but like also it's the year of 2020. Our Lord and Savior being inside will not let me play this game. So
so that actually, Mice and Mystics, I think, brings up another interesting thing that I'd like to kind of tackle in this
yeah,
this intro episode. So in that grand tradition of like I'm putting gigantic scare quotes around it, criticism that is like kind of a joke, but some corners of the world take just far too seriously.
sure,
Um, Mice and Mystics was very much like you are a mouse-sized mouse running around like a person-sized castle.
yeah,
Um, Redwall is never clear about this.
sure,
Because, are they mouse, or rather, my recollection of it is that it was never clear about it, because it's like, are these mouse-sized mouse running around a mouse-sized like monastery? Are these mouse-sized mouse running around a human-sized monastery? Or are these human-sized mouse running around a human-sized monastery?
or the even weirder one, human-sized rodents hanging out in rodent-sized buildings.
That is in fact the weirdest one. You are correct, Cody. So I think that something right off the bat is, what are we trying, like, how are we establishing this? Is this mice interacting with a mice-sized, which isn't, once again, this is not to suggest that like you can't create like big epic scales or things like that. In fact, in the first book, the protagonist has to crawl up a bell tower, which, even if it's a mouse-sized bell towers are designed to be pretty tall and pretty
Yeah.
daunting. Or are these mice, like Mice and Mystics, running around a human-sized like castle or abbey or setting?
So my thought on that is I personally really like the idea of animal-sized creatures in a world that was made for humans.
Okay.
Um I don't know, there's something about like a forested castle that's long since been abandoned, and the denizens of the forest have kind of scavenged and like using the parts and pieces of this area as its own civilization. That being said, and this isn't really like a topic that we're going to cover in this, but like it should be noted that I don't think that humans should be involved at
Yeah,
all.
I
Like
agree.
I kind of the idea that I have in my brain is that humans either don't exist anymore, or this area has been so lost and forgotten that like the chance of a human showing up in this setting would be nigh impossible. Um, I also like the idea of, and thinking about this, I kind of like the idea of like this is, and we'll this will kind of lead into the next topic that I kind of that I'll talk about. I kind of like the idea that humanity went through like a magical apocalypse, and now there's all of these like human structures and things all over the world, but they're gone. Like
Mm,
suddenly all humanity is gone, and the only things that are left are these animals that now are personified for some reason.
okay.
That's my current thought.
Alright, yeah, I like it. So, yeah, I think that that works for me. So we're
Cool.
not, no human interaction.
No human interaction and animal-sized creatures in a world that was made for humans.
Okay, cool. Now I am now realizing that there is a fourth contingency that I never even thought of,
Huh.
or a fifth contingency, because you threw out the horrifying human-sized rodents. It's possible that, like, it was a human-sized Abby, but with, like, mouse-sized everything else. So it's like a teeny tiny little mouse-sized bookshelf in the humans. But anyway, it's moot. It's moot. We're not dealing with it.
Right.
Um,
But
cool. All right.
the next thing that kind of blends into this is like, how fantasy are we gonna get with this? Is this gonna be like, is this still gonna be low fantasy like Redwall? Because it kind of, at least from what I've read and what I've been told, there is magic ish, but it's very like low key and not like not a lot going on with that.
Yeah, I would put it on, and this is once again a kind of tricky thing. Um,
Sure.
like, it depends on what Arthurian legend you're reading.
Okay.
But there are some Arthurian legends that are like pretty low magic, all things considered.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so what I mean by that is that it's like one of the things about Redwall is that it has things that are, it has prophecies and it has mysteries and puzzles and like things that are D&D ish without casting spells,
Okay.
if that makes sense. So I think that my thought would be like, you know, um, I want to keep it low fantasy,
Okay.
or I don't necessarily want like magic or things like that. I'm not trying to remember if magic popped up, and I'm just like my brain is forgetting it.
So in my brain, I actually wanted to go in the opposite direction.
Okay.
I wanted I wanted to go ham on the fantasy and the magic and whatnot. I kind of like the idea that maybe, back from what I was saying before, that there was some kind of magical human ending event that filled the land with magic, and now the world as we know it no longer exists, but animals have become personified, have become intelligent in that way because of the magic. And now we've hit this kind of medieval, like, as animals are being affected by this magic, we've kind of hit this like weird medieval setting among these new personified races, right?
Hmm.
um I kind of also like the idea that like this cataclysmic event still is like kind of shows up in places. Like maybe there's like, an old nuclear power plant or whatever that's still like radiating magic, and like the things that hang out, like, like the lore of the area is like, oh, you don't go to that power plant because all the things there are feral and like try to kill you, and they're also like twice the size they should be, right? Like I'm almost
Hmm.
kind of thinking like, what if we did like a magical fallout with personified animals? That was my thought. But if you want to keep it low
How
fantasy,
how about we have magic, but it's rare?
sure, we can do that.
Yeah.
We can do low fantasy,
No, no, no.
or low magic. I'm sorry, low
Yeah,
magic.
low magic, but magic can exist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like they
Okay.
exist, but it's not like everyone's a fucking wizard or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
but like maybe there is like there's the seer, that like the traveling seer that goes around and can see stuff. I like that. Let's do it.
cool. All right.
All right, that is what we have for our version, our version of personified animals living in a medieval setting.
Yes, but there's one last thing, Cody.
Yeah, tell me.
I think we need to give this thing a name.
It does need a name, for the, just the general,
So are we going to keep it in a religious setting? Cuz I have an
uh
idea.
religious how.
So it's Redwall Abbey.
Okay, I don't know, that flew over me. I did not know there was religious context there.
And Abbey is a is a
Oh
is a
yeah,
monk house,
is
is a
basically
monk
a,
hermitage basically.
Sure. Okay.
And so actually the character initially is training to be a monk, and then he becomes like a warrior.
Okay. Okay.
And like in this monastery, like most of the mice are monks, but the thing about monasteries was that they were kind of like active cities in their own right.
Right.
So like you have people who are like you have like builders and people who like work construction and things like that. You had like nuns and things like that as well.
Sure. Sure.
So are we gonna keep do what
You know
what
what?
say you of keeping it like that?
For the macro thing, we will talk about how religion, quote unquote, popped up for these people. So yeah, sure, we can keep that angle
Okay. Well
if
then
you
how
got something
about
cool for that.
Woodbury Monastery?
Woodbury Monastery. I like it. Is it Woodbury?
Yeah, Wood
Okay.
Bury.
Oh, Bury and then monastery. Cool.
All right.
All right. So you watched it happen or unfold as we
In
were
real
doing
time.
this. Yeah, real time world building. Yeah, we're doing a personified animals living in a medieval setting that we are calling the Woodbury Monastery.
Yeah.
I like
I'm
it.
excited.
Me
All
too.
right.
This
So
is
yeah,
gonna be fun.
next time we're gonna do a big old over the top, looking down over your shoulder approach.
Yeah, we're gonna look and see what the big, kind of the big implications of Woodbury Monastery. That's probably gonna include things about like religion will definitely be a topic that we talk about, but we'll save the other stuff for the next episode.
Heck yeah. Hey Cody, if people like this episode and they want to learn more, where's a place that where's somewhere they can go to learn more?
They can go to our website at www.fandomroulette.com. If you liked this episode and you want more, you can go there to see basically when things go live, and you can see our other shows that we're doing and a little description of what those shows are. And if you scroll past our bio and the Twitch feed and go all the way to the bottom, there's a little form you can fill out with your internet handle and whatever you want to talk about. And if you have a world setting that you'd like us to kind of look at and world build and think about for your game, let us know. We would like to take fan requests as to things they would like to talk about. They could be anything and everything. Our first two were the basic idea was fantasy Egypt and a post-futurist moon base. So, the world is your oyster.
Yeah. And hey Cody, if someone wants to share this episode with a friend, but they don't necessarily use the same podcasting app, podcatcher, where are some places that they can point them to find episodes of our show to listen to?
We are on a lot of places on the internet. You can find us on Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, basically all of your RSS podcatching apps. All you got to do is search Fandom Roulette.
And hey Cody, if people want to like check in on our schedule, learn some more about like the show and things like that, but they don't want to go to our website, they're just like scrolling through. Are there social media platforms where people can engage with us, send us funny memes or ideas, or engage with us in the conversation?
You bet. We're on Twitter at fandomr_podcast. That is our Twitter handle. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram. You just got to search Fandom Roulette.
Also, please remember to like, rate, review, and subscribe.
Yeah.
Leave us a comment, ring the bell. If you're on something with like a five, like with a star review, give us a 5-star ranking, things like that.
Yeah.
Help us, yeah,
Yeah,
help us
anything
move
that
up
you
those
guys
ladders.
do will move us up will show us to other people so that this podcast series of shows will expand and we'll be able to do more and do better of these as we gain more traction.
Yeah, and as always, we appreciate you joining us and
Yeah.
hanging out with us and world building with us. It's always a pleasure, and we're glad that you're here with us. So,
Yeah, 100%.
uh, that's it for us. Signing off for Phantom Roulette. This is Joe,
And I'm Cody.
and as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.